So the next step in preparing the decorative paper panels for our building walls is to put some ink on them. I'm going to use a faded jeans marker on the edges of all of the niches and the exterior edges, and then I'm using Hickory Smoke Distress Ink just a little on the edges as well. And then if you have various sizes of score tape, you can use them to your advantage. If not, just use whatever size score tape you have to prepare the backs of the panels. Now I like to put a continuous strip along the bottom, and that helps when we go to put them on to be able to place them more accurately without having a lot of extra sticky score tape in the way. So I'm going to go ahead and prep all of my panels with ink and score tape. And then I'll put them back in their baggies. On the center panel for building 4 and for building 8, those are the ones with the annexes, I've also prepped with some extra pieces of score tape in the middle, just so we have good adhesion when we glue the annexes on. Now for building 2, I'm using this candy stripe paper, and it has a border on it, so I'm going to cut that border off first, and then I'll have a piece that's 12 by 12. Now I want my North Pole to have diagonal stripes, and so what I'm going to do first is cut this paper diagonally from corner to corner. And then from each side, I will cut 2 1 1/2 inch wide strips by the length. So first diagonally, then 2 1 1/2 inch wide strips on either side. So I've lined up my papers so that my stripes line up. This of course isn't absolutely necessary. And the pieces that we need are 10 7/8 inches long. 10 7/8 inches long, and there is just enough room to get that in that short edge right there. So I'm going to cut them off even down here where that point comes in, and then flip them around and cut them off at 10 7/8. And now I'll just prep these with ink and score tape like before. Next we'll make the windows for the project, and there is a separate PDF that you can print out that's labeled Signs and Windows, and we'll get back to the signs in a little bit later. But there are 2 sizes of windows. There are 4 rows of large windows and 3 rows of small windows. Now by my count we need 40 large and 29 small, and so you have some extras here. And I will double check that count, and I'll put a little table over here on this one page that tells you how many to make. So let's start with the large ones, and what I want to do is cut out these 4 strips of large windows and keep them in a strip. So just cut on the outside line of each set, each row, so that you'll have a long strip of windows. Next we'll need some of our colored cardstock. I think it will take 4 strips to make 40 windows, and you cut those strips 3/4 of an inch wide. 4 at 3/4 of an inch. Next I'm going to prep the back of these cardstock strips with score tape. I have 5/8 inch wide, so I'm going to use that down the center. If you don't have something that wide, you can just use 2 strips of 1/4 inch tape on it. So to do the windows, we'll first take our strip of windows and turn it over and put some adhesive along the back. And then I'm just cutting off this end tab here. And this is one of my prepped pieces of cardstock. What I'll do is just cut each one apart. And then the first one starts a 1/16 of an inch down from the top. And then after that, just space them with 1/8 of an inch in between. So I'll do that until I have 40 windows on my strips. So after I have all my windows attached, I'll just take my bone folder and burnish them on. I'm going to wait to cut these apart until after I complete the small windows. Now we do the small windows like we did the large windows. The only difference is we'll start by making 29 of them, and our paper strips that we'll cut are 11/16 inch wide, 11/16, which is a 1/16 less than 3/4. I'm going to start with 2 and see if I can get them out of 2. I'm not quite sure. So 29 small windows. And don't forget to prep the back of your cardstock. So I have all my small windows on, and I had enough room for 28, so I found a little scrap to put the 29th one on. And now for the ones that are all in a strip, I'll just cut in between them. I'll just use my scissors, and under some really good light it's pretty easy to cut these apart. And you can see I've got 2 little dishes here to put my small and my large windows in. Next we'll work on our doors, and on our page that we've been referring to in the materials and cutting guide, there's a little chart in the bottom right hand corner labeled door and hanging sign materials. The doors have 3 components. First there is the pattern paper, and that's listed here under pattern paper. We need 12 doors at 7/8 inch wide by 1 7/8 inch tall. And I'll get those out of this pattern paper. Make sure that you keep your wood grain going vertical. And then there is a white trim layer made from white cardstock, and there are 10 pieces listed here that need to be cut. And then under the blue cardstock there are 2 sizes of frames. Because there are both single doors and double doors, and those 10 pieces are listed here under the blue cardstock as well. So I'll get all of those shapes cut out. So now that I have all my components cut out, I'll do a little prep on them. The pattern paper needs to be inked on the edges. I'm just going to use hickory smoke on everything this time. And then the blue cardstock needs to have score tape on the back side. To assemble the doors, it's just a matter of some basic layering, and I just use some simple adhesive for this process. When you put the door on top of the white cardstock, just align everything at the bottom, and then you'll have a 1/16 of an inch reveal of white trim around the sides and the top. And then add some adhesive to the back of that. And layer it on a piece of blue cardstock, again keeping the edges even, and then you'll have a reveal of blue about a 1/16 of an inch all around. And then take one of the little, these are the small windows, and there's a dark shadow in each of the window panes, and I'm always keeping that on the top right. So that dark shadow is going on the top right. And then I'm just centering it at the top of the door. And when I have that completed, I'll give that a good burnish. And then I'll add a little half pearl for a doorknob. And I'm just putting them all on the left side, except for when I make a double door, I put them next to each other. When I make the double door, I put each of the pattern paper doors a 1/16 of an inch. That'll give you a little bit wider here in the middle. You can see I drew an arrow on my white cardstock. It's very similar in size. This is the shorter side, so that I make sure that I get it oriented the correct way. So I'll get all of my doors prepared. Next I'll work on the signs, and I'll start by cutting them all out. Some of these lines are a little bit thicker. You should be able to put your knife right in between them, so each one will end up having a little bit of black around the edge. But it's not critical. Just cut them out as accurately as you can. So once I had all of my signs cut out, I went around them with a black marker just to get the edges, and then if I didn't cut them out exactly on their lines, that takes care of any issue like that. So now I'm going to prep the backs with some score tape. Now I have all of the backs prepped with score tape, and you'll notice that they're separated into two groups. Over here on the right are the signs that have duplicates. Those will be the hanging signs, and we'll do those in a minute. For all of these other signs, I'm going to take a piece of scrap cardstock. Can be anything. And I'll put them on, and then I'll cut them out so that I have a 1/16 of an inch of blue cardstock showing all around. So I'm going to do that for the ones on the left. So I have all of my signs outlined in blue cardstock, and I've prepped them with score tape on the back. And then for these, under our chart that says door and hanging sign material, you'll see for the toy sign we need a piece that is 1.5 by 3, and for the deck the hall sign we need a piece that is 1 3/8 by 3. So I'll go ahead and get those cut, and then I'll just install each sign near the bottom edge so that I have the same reveal left and right and on the bottom. Don't put the second sign on yet. So that completes our sign prep, and we will work on these two and finish them up later. Now we're ready to attach our windows and doors and signs to our pattern paper panels. And so I have all of those items off here to the side, and then I need two things from the one is from the template guide, and it's called the window placement guide, and the other is the last page in the materials and cutting guide, which is called the window and door placement guide. The first thing I want to do is cut out this hole and cut out this piece on the outside lines. Cut it underneath that dark line there. So I'm going to cut those two pieces out. So let's take a look at these two pieces of paper. On the page that's called Window and Door Placement Guide, it has a line for each building panel, and then it tells what goes in on each place for the first floor, the second floor, and if there's a third floor. An L with pink means a large window. An S with blue means a small window. We have some S doors, which are the single doors. And we have some double doors, which are, or D door, which is a double door. And then there are some signs that get put on, and they are listed in here as well. Now over here on the window placement guide, we'll take this piece that we cut out and we'll put some temporary adhesive on each end. And along the lines here, or along the edge here, are some markings on both sides, and they say what they go for. So for example, here it says first floor, all buildings. So I'm going to take my little piece that I put the temporary adhesive on, and I've got two red lines here, and I've got lines here on the two sides, and I'm going to align that. So now I have a place to line up my first floor thing. Anything that's listed on the first floor in this whole column is going to go get aligned with this part right here. And I'm going to also attach this piece to my craft mat. You can see that it's 4 inches across. I have it aligned down here on a line on my craft mat. And I'm just going to attach it up here at the top with some blue tape. And now let's see how this works. Here's building number 1. We don't need the niche frame, but here's the center panel. I'm going to take the center panel and put it underneath here. It always gets lined up with this bottom line here, and it gets centered left to right. And then according to our chart, it says that on the first floor, there's a large window on the left and a large window on the right. There's nothing in the center. So that means that we will center a large window on both the left side of center and the right side of center. And remember that dark shading on the windows goes to the upper right. And so I can just remove my score tape backing and install those windows. So here are those windows installed, and I think it's best to work on one building at a time. So I'm going to take this panel out, even though there's something that's going on the second floor, since I have this installed here already, and I'm going to put the left panel in and get it centered. And on the left panel, on the left we have a large window, and on the right we have a small door, or a single door, sorry. And the single door will come right up to that at edge because they are 2 inches tall. And there is my large window. So I'll go ahead and get those installed. And again, if something only has a left and a right, you center the right thing between the center line and the edge of the panel, and the left item between the left edge of the panel and the center line. So there's my left side first floor. This unmarked panel is my right panel. And according to the chart, on the right panel, I have a large window on the left and a single door on the right as well, just like we had for the left side. So I'll do that. So now I have the first floor in for building 1, and I'm ready to look at the second floor. So I'm going to remove this piece, And look over here, there are 3 things labeled second floor. One says building 8 only. The next one says second floor, all buildings except 1 and 8. And then here at the bottom, building 1 only. So we're working on building 1. And if you need to refresh your temporary adhesive, go ahead and do that. And then line this up. And I'm going to start with my center panel. I'm going to just move this little label down here to the bottom so it's not in my way. Don't get rid of that label. And for the center on the second floor, I have 2 large windows. So when I'm putting on the second story or any subsequent stories, if the paper has a pattern on it, instead of aligning left and right according to the center line up here, I'm just following the pattern. Like here I can barely see some part of the little dots here, so that's how I put the second story window on as well. This is the left side. It gets 2 large windows according to the chart, and I'll put those in next. On the right panel for building 1, on the second floor, it says that on the left we put the sweet shop sign, and on the right we put another large window. So here's the sweet shop sign, and I'll just install that on the left side there. And then I'll put my large window over here. Now building 1 does not have a 3rd floor. So before I set these aside or put them back in my baggie, I will burnish everything down. Make sure your little tags stay on the building panels. Now we're ready for building 2. I'm going to remove this. And the first floor for all buildings is down here, so I'll move it back down. And on building 2, on one side only, we'll put a single door. So I'm just going to slip this in, center a single door in here, burnish it, and put it aside. Now I'm ready to work on building 3. I've got the center here. And on the center we have a single door on the left and a large window on the right. Now in building 3, it says for both sides we'll put a large window in the center, so we don't make any distinguish between the left and the right side for what goes on here. So on both sides, on the first floor, we'll put a large window. Now that we have the first floor items installed for building 3, we can move our guide up to the second floor, and we'll put it at this line that says second floor all except buildings 1 and 8. So in the center we have 2 large windows to put in, and on a panel that doesn't have a noticeable pattern, if you'd like to line up the second floor window with the first floor window, you can just use your little ruler and line it up with the edge of this window, and then you'll have a guideline to place that second window so it'll be all in a row. So I'll go ahead and put the 2 windows on the center panel, and then on both sides we have another large window that gets centered on those panels. On building 3, we have something on the 3rd floor. It's only on the center panel. So I'm going to move my guide and find the 3rd floor, buildings 3 and 7. So I'll put this up here, and then I'll center a small window in panel 3. And that completes building 3, so I'll give everything a good burnish and put it aside, making sure I still have my tags on it. So for building 4, in this section, we have the center, the left side, and the right side listed, and then the annex. So we're going to start with the panels that go on building 4 itself. On the center, we don't have anything on the first floor, but we do for the left side and the right side. So I'll put my first floor back in, and I'll put a large window centered on both the left side and the right side. Then I'll look here on the chart and see what I have for the second story, and I have a large window centered again on both of these sides, so I'll put that in. And building 4 is in the category of second floor, all buildings except 1 and 8. Now we're ready to do our third floor, and we can remove this panel. And the third floor, it says, up here at the top, it says third floor building 4 only. So we don't need this at this point. And we'll put our center panel in. And the center panel has 3 small windows. We'll center one and then space out the other 2. So there's the center panel. And then if you notice here on the left side, there is nothing at the third story, but there is for the right side. We'll put a small window on the right side only. And then I'll give everything a good burnish. Now I'll work on the annex, and so I'm back to putting my guide at the first floor, and on the annex we have a double door. And then we can move our guide up to the second floor for all except buildings 1 and 8. And our guide says to put 3 large windows across there. So I'll put the one in the center in first and space out the other 2 on the left and right. Once you have those windows on, you can take your sign that says Elf Headquarters and center it here between the windows and the doors. Building 5, we have a left and a right side, and I'm going to move my guide down to the first floor. And on the left side, on the first floor, we have a large window, and on the right side, we have a single door. Then we can move our guide up to the second floor, all except buildings 1 and 8. And on the left side, we have another large window, and on the right side, we have the cafe sign. So this is the cafe sign. It says Christmas Cafe, and it just gets centered on our panel at that second floor level. And then on the third floor, for the right side only, we have a large window, and here I can see a guide that says third floor building 5 only. I'll move my tab down, and I'll put a large window in there on that guideline. For building 6 on the center panel, on the first floor, we have a double door. And then on the left panel, we have a single door on the left side and the in and out sign on the right side. And on the right panel, we have 2 small windows. I've moved my guide up to the second floor, and for the center panel, we'll put in 3 small windows. I'll put the center one in first and then space out the ones on the left and right. And then on the second floor for building 6, we have 2 small windows on both the left and the right panels. Building 6 is also the reindeer barn, and on the center panel I'm going to put the reindeer barn sign on. I'm going to hold it down closer to the double doors. Maybe it's about 3/8 of an inch above the double doors. You can of course put it wherever you want. Building 7, the center panel on the first floor has 2 large windows. Then the left panel has a large window on the first floor, and the right panel has a single door. So left large window, right single door. On building 7, the second floor on the center panel gets 2 large windows, and remember you can use your ruler to help you get those windows aligned straight. And then both the left and the right side panels get a large window at the second floor. So for the center panel, I've moved the guide up to where it says 3rd floor buildings 3 and 7. And on our chart, it says we'll put 1 small window in on the right side only. And then for our side panels, the left gets a small window up at the 3rd story, but the right does not get anything. So for building 8, we have both the main building and the annex. And the center on the main building does not get anything, but both sides of the main building get a large window. And then on the annex, we have a large window going on the left side and a single door going on the right side. Now for the second floor for building 8, it's one of the exceptions, and if you come up here and you see second floor building 8 only, and there's a special note here, and you see over here there's an asterisk by these 2 large windows. It says see spacing note on template, and over here it says space windows on building 8 center panel 1/4 inch in from each edge. So instead of doing our centering, when we put these 2 second story windows in, we'll put them 1/4 of an inch in from each edge. And you can use your ruler for this. I'm just going to eyeball it. The large window on these side panels gets centered as we usually do. And on the annex, we have a small window on the second story. Obviously, it's not tall enough to reach to that guide, so we're just going to center it on the building and put it somewhere up here near the top. Building 8 is also Santa's residence, so I'm taking the little sign that says S Claus and I'm centering it underneath the window on the annex. Now we can attach our pattern paper panels to the buildings. I'm going to start here with the 2 annexes, and what I like to do is, remember how when we put the score tape on the back of these panels, we put a long strip along the base. So I like to take that backing off of there, and then I'm not putting any pressure on that area where I took that score tape backing off. I'm using the other places that are not, that still have their backing on, and getting the panel aligned, and then I can put some pressure on it down here, and then I can flip this up and remove the remainder of the backing, and it's easy to get that panel installed correctly in that fashion. Now for Annex 8, if your panels are different for the sides and you like one better, put it on the left side because that's the side you will see the most. And whenever you install any of these panels, make sure you give them a good burnish. And then we'll just set the two annexes aside for now. So now we can install the panels on our other buildings, and remember that each one has been labeled with left, center, and right, and the niches are obvious. The only exception is building 2, which I'll get to in a second. And when we install these panels, remember to take the bottom strip off first of the score tape backing, and then align the other edges, and then you can put some pressure on this bottom and remove the remainder of the backing, and that way it's easy to get them aligned properly without dealing with a lot of sticky score tape adhering prematurely. Building 2 is the only building where we didn't mark anything, and if you open the village up, so that here I have building 3 and here's building 2. That's the side that building 1 is going to come on top of. That's the side that the door panel is going to go on. So it's going on this one. I'll close it up here so you get another view of where it is going to be attached. So if you're looking at it when the village is all closed up, this side where I have the paper on, that's the panel that has the door on it. All the other panels have no doors. So I'll just install each panel in turn and give it a good burnish. It's best to apply the pattern paper with the village in its upright position. But if you can't, make sure if you lay it down that you give good support to the buildings so you don't put any unnecessary stress on any of the joins. So I just remove the score tape backing from the bottom of the panel here and line it up with the rest, and then put some pressure on that bottom strip there. And then I come back and remove the other backing and put it in place. Well, I just realized when I was editing the recording that the piece where I explained which was the left and the right of Building 5, the Christmas Cafe, didn't get recorded. And so when you're looking at the back side of the village, the reindeer barn, the cafe, and the elf headquarters all in a row, when it's closed, you should see that Christmas Cafe side with the door. And if I open it up here a little bit, you can see there's the left side on the left. Once you have all the paper attached and burnished down, we can put the annexes on. We're going to start over here with Annex 4. It gets centered onto Building 4, and you'll want to do this in an upright position so that everything is level on the bottom. And I just use some wet glue. Make sure you get a little bit on that cardstock. And then center it in place. Put a little pressure on that and allow that to dry. And then you can also use some wet glue to center and attach the annex on Building 8. Again, do that in an upright position.